My name is Sandra. I'm 30. And at my own brother's wedding, I was shoved aside like an afterthought. The resort on Hilton Head Island was all sparkling ocean views and over-the-top elegance, the kind of place that screams money and perfection. I'd driven in just from Myrtle Beach, the salty wind whipping through my car as I pulled up, hoping for once to blend in without the usual sting. After the beach vows, I walked into the reception pavilion and checked the seating chart. My name wasn't on any of the main tables. A coordinator with the fake smile led me past the glowing center to table 17, tucked in the very back corner, half behind the DJ booth next to the service door. One quick look told me everything I was hidden. That's when my brother spotted me. Mason, glowing in his white tux, flashed that mocking grin and leaned in. "Some people don't really belong in the family." His words hit like a slap. I gripped the gift in my hand, turned without a word, set it on the pile, and walked straight out to my car. As I drove off the island, a sharp scream cut through the evening air from behind, raw, furious. His perfect day was unraveling, and I knew exactly why. Before I dive into how it all exploded, drop a comment below telling me where you're watching from. Love seeing these stories reach everywhere. And if you're here to the end, hit like and comment a 1 so I know. A couple of weeks earlier, I was at my desk in the small design studio overlooking the boardwalk in Myrtle Beach when the email pinged in. The subject line read, "You're invited, Mason and Peyton's wedding celebration," in elegant gold script, and the attachment opened to a glossy digital invitation thicker than most magazines. It detailed every inch of the event at the oceanfront resort on Hilton Head Island. Private beach ceremony at sunrise, cocktail hour with live jazz under palm trees, a 5-course dinner sourced from local seafood, and an after-party with fireworks over the water. The whole thing screamed extravagance, the kind my family never skimped on when it came to my brother. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Before I could reply, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom, Linda Thompson, the woman who'd planned every detail of this down to the custom monogrammed napkins. "So excited you're coming, honey. Just remember, this is Mason's big day. No distractions." "Okay. We want everything perfect for him." The sweetness in her words couldn't hide the warning underneath, the same one she'd used since we were kids, whenever I threatened to steal even a sliver of attention. I set the phone down and paced the narrow office, the hum of the air conditioner mixing with distant roller coaster screams from the amusement pier outside. Part of me wanted to delete the whole thing, pretend I never saw it. Instead, I dialed April, my best friend since college, who'd watched this family dynamic play out more times than either of us cared to count. She picked up on the second ring, her voice muffled by the clink of glasses. She was bartending the lunch shift at the beachfront grill down the street. "You're seriously considering this?" she asked after I read the invitation highlights aloud. "Sandra, come on. Your mom basically just told you to show up invisible. And Hilton Head. That's what, 2 hours away, close enough for them to expect you, far enough to make it feel like a production." She paused, pouring something that hissed over ice. "They've been pulling this crap forever. Remember your graduation party that turned into Mason's early acceptance celebration? Skip it. Save the gas and your sanity." I leaned against the window, watching tourists in flip-flops haul coolers toward the sand. She wasn't wrong. The patterns were etched deep. But something stubborn rose in my chest, the same impulse that had pushed me to build my career without a single dime of family help. "I have to go," I told her. "Not for them. For me. If I don't show, they'll say I couldn't handle being in the background. This time, I'm proving I won't let them dictate how I react anymore." April sighed, the sound of a friend who'd lost this argument before. "Fine. But promise you'll text me the second you want an extraction plan. I'll have the truck ready." We laughed, though it felt hollow, and hung up with her final warning to keep expectations low. That afternoon, I closed the studio early and headed to the upscale gift boutique on Ocean Boulevard, the one with imported crystal and handcrafted pieces that cost more than most people's weekly grocery bills. The clerk wrapped a sleek wooden music box in silver paper engraving the couple's names on the lid, while I watched, already picturing how it would stand out among the sea of envelopes and department store boxes. It wasn't cheap, $300, but it felt right substantial enough to match the occasion without screaming for attention. Back home in my condo, I packed light one sundress for the ceremony, heels I could ditch for driving toiletries in a small bag. No need for extras. This wasn't a vacation. I thought about the route. Exactly 2 hours and 15 minutes via the coastal highway past marshes and live oaks dripping with Spanish moss. The drive would give me time to think, or at least pretend I had control over what came next. The morning I left, the sky hung low and gray, typical late summer weather that promised storms later. I loaded the gift into the passenger seat, secured with the seatbelt so it wouldn't slide, and merged onto the road heading south. Traffic was light midweek, just delivery trucks and retirees in convertibles. As the miles ticked by, the radio played old country songs my dad used to hum during fishing trips we took before everything shifted focus to my brother's future. The marshes gave way to bridges over inlets, water glinting like shattered glass on both sides. Halfway there, I pulled into a gas station for coffee, the kind brewed too long and served in styrofoam cups. Standing by the pump, I reread Mom's text one last time, then deleted the thread. No more warnings, no more sweetness laced with conditions. The gift box caught my eye in the reflection of the car window, its ribbon fluttering slightly in the breeze. Whatever happened on that island, I was done playing the role they'd assigned me years ago. The engine roared back to life, and I pointed the car toward the exit, the resort waiting just over the horizon with its perfect facade and hidden cracks. That drive stirred up old memories from the house we grew up in on the north end of Myrtle Beach, the one with the creaky wooden porch facing the dunes, and a garage always half full of fishing gear. I was 10 that summer, the kind where the air smelled like sunscreen and fried shrimp from the boardwalk stands, and school had just let out for good behavior rewards that never quite reached me. One afternoon, while Mom was at the grocery store stocking up on charcoal for yet another backyard barbecue centered around my brother's Little League triumphs, I wandered into the hallway closet searching for an old beach towel I'd hidden away. The shelves were cluttered with board games, missing pieces, and holiday decorations shoved in plastic bins, but tucked behind a stack of faded photo boxes sat a thick, leather-bound album I'd never noticed before. Curiosity pulled me to the living room carpet, where I flipped it open under the fan's lazy spin. Page after page revealed my brother Mason from the moment he came home from the hospital, tiny fists clutching a blanket, first steps in the sandbox we'd built together, birthday candles glowing on cakes shaped like baseball gloves. There were dozens of him at the aquarium, touching stingrays, him waving from the carousel horse, him asleep in Dad's arms after a long day at the pier. I turned faster, expecting to find at least one snapshot of me mixed in, maybe the time I built that sandcastle taller than both of us, or the school play, where I had the lead role reciting lines about ocean conservation. Nothing. Not a single image of the girl who'd been there 4 years longer, who shared the same blood and the same cramped bedroom until he arrived, and everything shifted. The album ended with Mason's most recent preschool graduation cap tilted comically over one eye, Mom beaming beside him in a sundress printed with seashells. Footsteps on the porch announced her return bags rustling as she pushed through the screen door. I held the album up without thinking, the question already forming. "Mom, why is this only Mason?" She paused in the kitchen entry, setting down groceries with a practiced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Linda Thompson, the organizer of every family milestone worth documenting." "Oh, sweetie, that's his special book. You're so independent, always off exploring or drawing those intricate maps of imaginary islands. You don't need pictures to remember. You live it all in the moment." Her explanation landed flat, like excusing a missing ingredient in a recipe everyone else got to taste. She ruffled my hair on the way to unpack, humming a tune from the radio, as if the conversation ended there. I closed the album and slid it back into place. the leather cool against my palms. But the emptiness lingered heavier than the humid air outside. Later that evening, Dad came home from his shift at the engineering firm downtown. Gregory Thompson, the quiet man who fixed bridges for a living, but rarely mended the gaps at home. He dropped his keys in the bowl by the door and headed for the fridge, grabbing a beer before noticing me, still cross-legged on the floor with a coloring book I'd pulled out to distract myself. Our eyes met when he glanced toward the closet, the album's edge peeking out just enough to betray what I'd found. He froze for a second bottle halfway to his lips, then simply turned away to join Mom on the patio, where the grill was heating up for steaks reserved for celebrating Mason's latest trophy. No words. No acknowledgement, just the screen door swinging shut behind him. That silence spoke louder than any lecture confirming the hierarchy without needing to spell it out. From then on, I stopped looking for inclusion in their framed collages on the walls or the stories they retold at dinner parties. Instead, I poured energy into school projects that earned blue ribbons they barely noticed, saved allowance for art supplies they never reimbursed, and mapped out plans for a life where approval wasn't currency. By the time high school rolled around, I'd learned to navigate the house like a guest in my own space. Polite nods during family meals, excuses to study at the library, when gatherings revolved around my brother's achievements. The album incident became the foundation for every decision that followed, pushing me towards self-reliance, long before I understood the term. College applications went out without fanfare, scholarships won through essays about resilience no one at home read. The pattern solidified their world. Orbited Mason and mine expanded outward away from the dunes and the unspoken rules that governed who mattered most. Fast forward to my senior year of college when I was 22 and buried in final critiques at the design program in Charleston. The National Interior Architecture Competition had been the pinnacle of the curriculum, a chance to pitch a full-scale adaptive reuse project to industry judges from firms in New York and Atlanta. My entry focused on transforming an abandoned textile mill into mixed-income lofts, with sustainable features like rainwater harvesting and community gardens integrated into the structure. Weeks of sleepless nights rendering models and refining presentations paid off when the email arrived, announcing I'd taken first place, complete with a $10,000 prize and an internship offer from a prestigious studio in Charlotte. I drove the hour back to Myrtle Beach that Friday afternoon, the certificate folded carefully in my portfolio on the seat beside me, rehearsing how to share the news without making it a big deal. The house looked the same as always, vinyl siding faded from salt air, and the driveway crowded with Mom's SUV and Dad's work truck. I let myself in through the side door, the familiar scent of lemon cleaner hitting me, as I called out that I was home for the weekend. Dad was in the recliner, scanning blueprints spread across the coffee table, his reading glasses perched low on his nose. I held up the award letter, excitement bubbling despite my efforts to temper it. "Hey, Dad, I won the national competition. The mill project got top honors." He glanced up, nodded once with a small smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes, and murmured congratulations before returning to his notes on load-bearing walls. It was more than I expected from him, the man who communicated in gestures, more than words, but still felt like a footnote. Mom was in the kitchen on her cordless phone, pacing between the island and the fridge, while coordinating details for something that sounded urgent from her tone. She waved me over with one hand, mouthing "hold on," as she wrapped up the call about centerpieces and guest lists. When she finally hung up, I tried again, sliding the certificate across the counter. "Mom, look at this. First place nationally, and they want me for an internship." She scanned it quickly, her expression brightening for a split second before the phone buzzed again, and she turned away to answer, promising we'd talk later amid assurances that the caterer could accommodate extra seafood stations. The weekend unfolded around a different milestone entirely. My brother Mason, 18 and fresh from high school commencement, had graduated summa cum laude, with acceptances to every pre-law program he'd applied to, including early admission to a top-tier university known for feeding into Ivy League law schools. Saturday evening, the backyard transformed into a celebration zone, with rented tables under string lights, a hired DJ spinning upbeat tracks, and a buffet loaded with low country boil ribs and a sheet cake iced with his future alma mater's logo. Neighbors and family friends milled about clinking bottles and offering toasts to Mason's bright path in law, predicting he'd argue cases before the Supreme Court someday. Mom orchestrated photo ops, positioning him center stage with his diploma while directing the photographer to capture every angle. Dad stood nearby, beer in hand, chuckling at stories from Mason's debate team coach about closing arguments that left opponents speechless. I found a spot at one of the outer table's plate, balanced on my knee, pushing shrimp around as conversations flowed about scholarships and clerkships waiting for my brother. Someone asked what I was up to these days, and I mentioned the competition win in passing, but the topic shifted back to Mason's perfect LSAT practice scores before I finished the sentence. Sitting there amid the laughter and backslaps, the weight of my own accomplishment settled into something ordinary, just another expectation met without fanfare in a family where excellence from me was baseline and genius from him was headline news. 3 days before the wedding, I stopped at the crowded beach bar on the main strip in Myrtle Beach. After wrapping client meetings, the kind of place with neon signs advertising happy hour specials and live acoustic sets drawing tourists in sandals. The wooden deck overlooked the ocean waves rolling in under string lights as servers balanced trays of fried pickles and craft beers. I claimed a stool at the far end, ordering a soda water with lime to unwind before heading home to pack the last few items. That's when a familiar face slid onto the seat next to mine. Whitney, a former co-worker of my brother's from his internship at the local law firm last summer, her hair tied back in a ponytail and still wearing the blouse from office hours. She recognized me immediately, waving over the bartender for a refill on her draft. "Sandra Wright, Mason's sister. Small world running into you here." We exchanged quick updates on work, her complaining about case files piling up, and me mentioning a recent condo redesign downtown. The conversation shifted when she leaned in closer, lowering her voice amid the guitar strums from the stage. "Speaking of Mason, he's been talking nonstop at the office about this wedding to Peyton Reynolds. You know, the daughter of that big real estate family with developments all over the coast." Whitney rolled her eyes slightly, stirring her drink with a tiny straw. "He makes it sound like the ultimate score, not just love. Says once they're married, he'll push for joint ownership on some prime properties, then file for divorce after a year or two and walk away with half without a prenup blocking him." I set my glass down harder than intended, the ice clinking sharply. She noticed my reaction and pulled out her phone, scrolling through screenshots with a frown. "It's not just gossip. He bragged about it in texts to one of his old frat buddies. The guy forwarded them to me because he thought it was shady, especially since Peyton seems genuinely into him." Whitney turned the screen toward me, the messages glowing in the dim light. The first one from my brother read detailed steps on charming her family during engagement parties to build trust, avoiding any mention of separate finances until after the vows. Another outlined timelines for transferring assets into shared accounts post-honeymoon, calculating how state laws would favor equitable distribution in a short marriage. He even joked about faking devotion long enough to secure board seats in the Reynolds company before pulling the plug. Whitney shook her head. As I zoomed in on the threads, her expression mixing disgust and pity. "I couldn't believe it when I saw these. Peyton deserves better than being a stepping stone. Figured you should know, family or not." She forwarded the images to my number right there, the notification buzzing in my pocket like evidence I hadn't asked for, but now couldn't ignore. Shock coursed through me as I read every calculated word the plan laid out, like a legal brief rather than a life commitment. My brother, the one always positioned as the golden achiever, reducing a marriage to a transaction designed to exploit trust and walk away richer. The bar noise faded into a distant hum, patrons laughing at jokes, while I gripped the phone tighter, piecing together how far his ambition had twisted. The night before the ceremony, I checked into a modest hotel room on the edge of Hilton Head Island, the kind with balcony views of the marsh, and a small desk perfect for what I had in mind. After dropping my bag and splashing water on my face to shake off the drive from earlier that day, I ventured out to the cluster of boutique shops lining the village square, where artisans sold everything from hand-painted signs to custom jewelry under awnings strung with fairy lights. One storefront caught my eye with its display of polished wooden keepsakes, the scent of cedar wafting through the open door. Inside, shelves held music boxes in various sizes, mechanisms wound by tiny keys that played classic tunes when opened. The owner, a retiree with calloused hands from years of carving, helped me select a compact oak piece large enough for my purpose, but elegant on a gift table. He engraved Mason and Peyton in flowing script across the lid, while I waited the laser humming softly as it etched the letters permanently into the surface. Back in the room with the box secured in tissue, I spread out supplies I'd picked up at a nearby print shop. Sheets of delicate silk paper thin enough to fold without bulk, translucent like frosted glass. Using my laptop, I formatted the key excerpts from the messages onto a template that mimicked subtle floral patterns when viewed from afar, the text blending into vines and leaves in faint gray ink. The printer whirred quietly, producing several copies, until one looked seamless, the words hidden among the design, unless held close under light. I trimmed the sheet to fit the interior compartment, rolling it loosely around a small dowel to prevent creases before sliding it into the base where the mechanism sat. When the lid closed, the paper remained concealed, only revealing itself upon opening and lifting the velvet-lined tray. The melody selected was a soft rendition of their chosen first dance song, innocent on the surface, but now carrying a deeper message. On the accompanying card, heavy cream stock with a simple border, I penned a brief note in my neatest handwriting, wishing you both a lifetime of genuine harmony. May every note ring true. The phrasing hinted at authenticity without spelling it out, a quiet nudge wrapped in congratulations. I sealed the envelope with a wax stamp from the hotel gift shop, the emblem of intertwined anchors symbolizing something stronger than it appeared. Finally, I wrapped the entire box in metallic silver paper that caught the lamplight, tying it with a wide satin ribbon in navy to match the wedding colors listed on the invitation. The bow sat full and symmetrical, the package looking every bit the thoughtful sibling gesture amid stacks of crystal and checks. Stepping back to admire the finished result on the dresser, a calm settled over me, the kind that comes from decisive action rather than endless rumination. This wasn't about revenge in the explosive sense, but protection for Peyton and a release for myself from years of enabling silence. The gift would land exactly where it needed, exposing calculations disguised as commitment without me uttering a word at the event. I placed it carefully into a padded tote for the short drive to the resort in the morning, the weight of it grounding rather than burdensome. The morning of the wedding dawned clear over the resort on Hilton Head Island, the beach set up with rows of white chairs facing an arch draped in white roses and drifting sheer fabric. Guests in pastel linens arrived, early, programs fluttering as a string quartet played soft preludes. I slipped into a seat toward the back, the sand warm under my sandals, watching the bridal party assemble, while groomsmen adjusted boutonnieres. When the photographer called for core family shots post-ceremony, Mom gripped my elbow firmly and steered me aside with a tight smile. "Just the immediate group for these, honey. You understand?" The camera clicked away at my brother Peyton, and both sets of parents clustered, close laughter echoing as they posed against the ocean backdrop. I stepped back without protest, the exclusion familiar enough to sting less than it once did. By afternoon, The reception pavilion buzzed with activity under open-sided tents tables, laden with tiered seafood displays and floral centerpieces towering high. A coordinator in a headset intercepted me at the entrance, consulted her clipboard, then led me past the main floor to table 17. Tucked in the very back corner, half hidden behind the DJ booth, right next to the swinging service door where staff kept rushing in and out. My brother spotted me settling in, approaching with Peyton on his arm, and that familiar smirk sharpening. He leaned down just enough for the words to carry. "Some people don't really belong in the family." The line landed exactly as intended, a few guests nearby chuckling politely before turning away. I stood gift in hand, placed the silver-wrapped music box squarely on the designated table amid others, and walked out through the nearest exit without looking back. As my car pulled onto the main road, a sharp scream cut through the air from behind. Raw, furious. The real chaos erupted the next morning at the traditional gift-opening brunch in the resort's oceanfront presidential suite. Just both immediate families and closest friends, about 35 people, mimosas, flowing, cameras off. Uncle Patrick volunteered as usual, picked my silver box, read the card aloud with his usual drama king energy. "Wishing you both a lifetime of genuine harmony. May every note ring true." He wound the key, their first dance song played, everyone cooed. Then Patrick lifted the velvet tray to admire the craftsmanship. The silk paper unrolled. Norma Reynolds took one look, held it to the light, went completely still. She passed her phone around with the screenshots zoomed in. Silence. Peyton turned white, started shaking, tore off the little Mrs. headband she'd kept on from the night before. Norma was already on speaker with their family attorney. 20 minutes later, the entire Reynolds family had quietly loaded their SUVs and left the resort. No scene, no yelling, just pure ice. 2 weeks later, Peyton filed for emergency annulment under South Carolina law, citing fraud in the inducement. The case took 8 long months, but she won. Marriage erased from the record, assets stayed protected. Mason's firm put him on indefinite unpaid leave the day the story hit the Charleston legal blogs, then let him go quietly. Mom still tries to organize family healing dinners. I let the calls go to voicemail. Meanwhile, a major resort chain contracted my studio for a full redesign of their flagship property in Myrtle Beach. The biggest job of my career so far. Days got busy, evenings got quiet, and for the first time, the ocean outside my window sounded like it belonged to me. Let this be the lesson: sometimes the most devastating revenge doesn't explode at the reception. It waits until the next morning, plays a pretty song, and lets the truth unroll when only the people who really matter are left in the room. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for sticking with this story to the end. Your time means everything. Drop a comment with your thoughts on family dynamics like these, or share if you've ever had to draw a hard line.